Hello everyone, in our last video we were talking about the processing ability of individual when they reach their later adulthood. So now in this particular video we will discuss about the longitudinal study which had its focus on the 6 ability area and how these areas of ability decline over a period of time among the elderly population. So we can get a very clear idea of how things change over time and which area is most affected and which area doesn't seem to be affected. So let us now have a look on the concepts which were the focus of the study. For example, the researcher tried to understand the mental ability of the elderly population in 6 particular areas, one being the verbal meaning, that is vocabulary, second being verbal memory, number, that is computational ability of the individual, then spatial orientation, inductive reasoning and perceptual speed. All these things were assessed over a longitudinal study, and an encouraging finding was that the cognitive ability declined slowly over time period. We all know this. We cannot negate this, but then with respect to this, there were some other finding that mostly fairly healthier older individuals, people who are healthy olds, would be able to perform better even in their later years. It was found that people would not lose all their cognitive ability, especially these 6 important cognitive abilities, until they reach the age of 70. So it is fine. The person would work functionally even at the age of 70 with certain limitation. At times the memory might be impaired, at times the cognition or the reasoning skill might be slowed down, but then these things function almost accurately until the age of 70. There are also seen the possibilities that few would continue with their ability to function like a healthy individual even during their 80 years. That is where we can relate back to the life story of Air Force pilot who indulged himself in orbiting the Earth even at the age of 90 in the year 1997. We mentioned about him in our first video, that is the introductory part. So we can make out that these things are also possible, and certainly some participants showed decline during their age of 40. The range, even by the time they had reached the middle adulthood, there were decline in their few cognitive abilities. As even while talking about the middle adulthood, the changes that are taking place during the middle adulthood, we found that the deterioration process begins in our middle adulthood, and we could see that there is a changes going on. There are certainly decline is approaching. People are approaching their old age, so they are on the process of their to reach their old age. So when this is the case, so during the age of 40 itself, there were certain impairments in the memory and cognition and functioning in everyday life. However, these things were stabilized by the time they reached their old age. So they were able to manage. So the deterioration was for a few years during their middle ages, but then when they reached 60 years or when they reached their later adulthood, it was fine. They were able to manage their life. That doesn't mean that the impairment has corrected itself, but then the impairment did not proceed further. There was impairment initially, but it was halt. It has halt there, and now the individual is working fine with certain limitations in their cognition. At times they might forget. So this is, you can relate at times. Your parents, your uncles and aunts would tell you that I'm not able to recollect where I kept my keys. So this is common. So this impairment is seen. So regularly they check for the gas stove to be on or off. So these things are seen, but then even in the age of 60s, 70s, they are able to manage fine. They are able to remember things. So few things might be deteriorated, but few things would definitely continue to function well. And again, the role of genetics in this area is also very important. So when an individual is able to score high, then his genes also contributes a lot, as well as his ability to deal with the circumstances of testing, or the ability to handle such situation in everyday life. If an individual is working or indulge in very complex form of life, no work life, which requires more of the cognitive skills involved, then he would definitely work well even in his older ages. As well as, if you could see that if an individual is stress free and his life is all good, then his ability to function well is also very much high even in their later adulthood. And the diet of an individual also plays a role. Schooling of an individual also plays a role. So when we have proper schooling, when we have high correlation with the positivities of life, then we would definitely function well even in our later adulthood. And then comes your relationship with your spouse. If you have an intelligent spouse, then your ability to function well is also same. So these things add on to your lifestyle. So there is another hypothesis there, according to engagement hypothesis. This hypothesis says that high intellectual ability early in life and receive favorable education and environmental opportunity trend as adult to have engaged lifestyle marked by complex intellectual demanding occupational and social activities. So when you are into occupational, social, educational and demanding life expectations, life expects many things from you. Your role as a mother, role as your wife, role as a boss, role as a manager, role as a colleague, role as, you have many different roles to play in your workplace. Then it's definitely your ability to function well is seen. You're growing every day, you're keeping yourself active every day. So this makes you this prevents you from aging. I remember my aunt, she was a teacher, so when she retired, you don't feel that she is that old, because she was indulged with students all the time. So she was into activities all the time. So when you and these activities in schools and colleges, it is always required to be well prepared. You have to be well prepared each and every minute. You have to know everything about the new aspects that are growing up. So these things prevent you from aging, and these things help you to keep your functionality in a good phase. So that is all required for maintaining a very good life. So that is the hypothesis that tells us, the engagement hypothesis tells us about how this education and the background help us to keep ourselves healthy and active. So now let us move on to understand the competence in everyday task and problem solving. So when we talk about the competence, it is the individual's ability to work or progress, and how far they can give their best to dealing with the very varied kind of things in their life, to how far that accuracy and the quality is maintained. That is understood here. So here again you have a study. So the study is the purpose of intelligence, of course, is not to take the test but to deal with the challenges of daily life. So this is a very nice kind of a statement which says that the purpose of intelligence, of course, underline it, of course it is not to just take a test, but it is to deal with your everyday life. It's okay if you get a good scores in your examination, but if those scores are not worthy to help others, then it's definitely of no use. For example, let me put this in a clear way. So you are a distinction holder, but then you are not able to deal with the real life problems of the patients who come to you. Being a psychologist, of course, you will have patients and clients. If you are not able to deal with the real life patients, if you don't have those skills, but you know very well how the therapy has to be done, you know how what are the procedures to be taken, all these things, all this knowledge, but you do not know how to cure a patient. All you know is a theory, then it's of no use. So practically it has to be put across. It has to gain its importance. So that is really required. Same way, if you relate this to a mental retardation, so you can make out that the intelligence test administered might give you the IQ less than 70. But if you have the adaptive skills and you are able to manage your life, then it's quite fine. Nobody calls you as mentally retarded. Just your IQ is low, and those scores are meaningless if you're able to manage your life. Same way, the competency is that though you score less on your intelligence test, but you are able to manage your life in a good way, then there is a failure in performing the test. That's all. But you're not a failure in your life. That competence, the failure in your test as an elderly might be due to anxiety. We spoke about this. The anxiety that haunts the elderly population while taking the intelligence test. So these things are these things we'll discuss, and there is a small study here again. So that study is called IADLS, that is Instrumental Activities of Daily Living. So the study is everyday activities, competence in which is considered a measure of ability to live independently. So how far an individual can live independently in his life at the elderly age. So that is the outcome that the study gives. So as people get older, an important test of cognitive competence is the ability to live independently is measured by IADLS, that is Instrumental Activities of Daily Living. So this test manages to find the ability of an individual in various different areas. For example, it has few lists of areas, that is managing finance, shopping for necessities, housekeeping, then you have obtaining transportation, preparing meals, taking medications, using telephones. All these activities of daily living. Are you able to go out for shopping even when you are age 70? Are you able to use the telephone at the age of 70? Are you able to prepare your own food at the age of 70? Are you able to provide for yourself with the housekeeping? Your house is fine, you're cleaning, you're taking care of your household things. Is it possible to you? Are you able to take medication on your own? Go to medical, fetch a medication, come back and administer. In the sense, take the medications when and particularly on time when doctor has prescribed it to be taken. If you are fine to do that without any assistance, then this test says that you are competent. You are able to carry out your day-to-day living without any problem. So this is one of the study wherein the older this task were given to the elderly population, and their understanding was drawn. How far their ability to perform was measured. For example, filling out a Medicare form. So this will test most of the things, that your ability to recollect few things, like when you're filling a Medicare form, you will be focusing on various things: name, age, then your previous history of medication, what else, which doctor you consulted. Everything has to be recalled. And secondly, the eyesight is also comes into picture. Though you are wearing glasses, but even with the helping aids like visual aids, you are able to carry out this. It's good and fine. So that is there. So and when you're that's what, filling out a Medicare form, filling out a mail order catalog form, looking up an emergency telephone number, figuring out a bus schedule, reading a nutrition label on a food package, reading a medicine bottle label, reading an instructions for using household appliances, like if you bought a new fridge or a new mixer, grinder, anything. So you look for the instructions there, how it has to be used. If you are able to do that. Fluid intelligence, and to a lesser extent, crystallized intelligence accounted for more than half of the variance in performance. So here fluid intelligence is less used and crystallized intelligence is majorly focused, because all these things you did when you were young. So nothing new. You are not exposed to a new situation here. Filling out a Medicare form, filling out, finding a telephone number, looking for the health proteins, nutrition content in the label of the food package, and then what else? Figuring out a bus schedule, then reading an instruction for using household appliances. All these things you have already done. So there is no fluid intelligence. There is nothing new to do. All you have to do is just use the knowledge that you previously had in a new situation, where the situation is also new, you are also old enough now. So the crystallized intelligence is accounted here more than the fluid intelligence. So health and educational background of the individual, as we discussed earlier, same thing accounts here as well. So background affected results through the effects of cognitive ability. So here we had this hypothesis, that is engagement hypothesis, which also said the same thing. With a good educational background, there are chances of increasing an individual's ability of competence and cognitive ability. Cognitive factors are good when an individual is exposed to this kind of things. So the relationship may be bidirectional, but not many poor health and lack of education limit cognition, but people with higher cognitive ability tend to get better education and take care of their health. So here, education itself is not the root cause of being a very good and functional human being at the later age. But here what matters is the individual's ability to educate himself to take care of his life. So with the proper education, with good education, you are exposed to more information, more healthy tips, more knowledge about how to handle your life even in your older adulthood. So that will help you to take care of yourself. That doesn't mean that if you are not educated, you cannot take care of your life. If you are aware of these kind of things, then you definitely know how to take care of all these aspects in your life. So although AIDLs, which depend heavily on the information processing skills, generally decline with age, that is not necessarily true of ability of solving interpersonal problem, which tend to have stronger emotional bond, overtones and solutions that are less cut and dried. The effectiveness of older adults' response to such problem often depends on how meaningful the problem is to them. So this test also focuses on the fluid intelligence, where the problem solving and problem perceiving ability is checked. But then when such kind of test is given, it is always a matter of concern how an individual whose cognitive ability deteriorated over a time period would function. So here, if the test or problem solving test is based on the emotionality, if it requires an individual to give his heart and soul to solve a problem, then he would do better in it. But it depends on the perception of the elderly, how far they believe that the problem is important, how far they believe that this would be it is able to be tackled. So here again, problem solving requires the crystallized intelligence, at the same time the fluid intelligence. But most of the time during the later adulthood, it is function based on your stored knowledge. So the same problem we had discussed in middle adulthood, where there was a flood in an apartment's basement, and the adolescents were not able to tackle with this problem, but the elderly, those who were in their middle adulthood, they were able to tackle out the problem of this artificial flooding in their apartment's basement. So this was based on their prior knowledge. Here also there is a processing ability there. Here is also the problem solving is involved. Same time, they were not able to give the possible solutions of like reading the minds of the instructor, which particular item, the toys that the instructor was thinking about. But this was better off among the adolescents, but the elders or the middle-aged adults were not able to do so. Whereas they were able to find the solution for the problem of artificial flooding in the basement of their apartment. So you have to relate this back to the previous middle adulthood problems and the studies based during the middle adulthood, so as to get the clear idea of how aging cognitive aging is focused there and here. A little variation, but then that has some connectivity to the previous one. And when we say that the meaningful and important the problem is, there was another study which tells how adolescents and adults, that is older adults, react to a problem when they are exposed to them. So if things are very much complex and which requires more of emotion, the more ability to understand and tackle the crucial problem, adolescents would back off, or they would give some stupid and complicated solution. But when it is required to be handled very maturely and it has a lot of complication in it, the elderly would look into this kind of problem solving, though it requires fluid intelligence as per the studies and as per the understanding. The elderly population would definitely give their best to tackle these kind of problems, and they would do better than the adolescents. So expectation from the adolescents to tackle these kind of problem is high, but then even from the middle-aged people, because of their ability to function, but then these elderly population would do better when the situation has the emotion in it, when the situation requires that emergency and importance. So if you could, if at all you have watched this movie Bhagwan, so the female lead, Malini, goes out of her way at night to protect her granddaughter. So she goes to a party where her granddaughter wanted to hang out. So there her granddaughter falls in trouble, and she had nobody else to help there. And though her granddaughter was not so pleased with her grandmother, from this point of time, after her grandmother helps her out in such a horrifying situation and protects her from her parents and by hiding the info and letting her not get scolded by her parents, at this situation, the lady goes out of her way to handle the situation with much more she gives her best, so that she will not think that she is old, she will not think that is she able to go there. All these things she never thought of. She just gave a best of herself when the problem was so crucial. So this sums up your understanding of how people deal with their everyday life situation and what the competency of the elderly could be. What are the things that would favor and what things might not favor them. So these things will help you out in understanding. So let us look into the other factors in next video. Thank you.